Before we get started, I want everybody who has an iPhone to take your iPhone out right now and tell Siri, Happy Back to the Future Day, and see what happens. Let's just take a moment, and because this is a very hallowed day in science fiction and entertainment. So this is great. We're hearing Back to the Future. Anyway, nice little Easter egg there. She's got like a dozen responses if you say Happy Back to the Future Day. How's everybody doing? Well, this is the last vestige. We've been having a lot of, I'm Steve Peters. I'm a substitute moderator for my partner, Benham Carbasi, who is out ill. And we've had a lot of cancellations due to illness. But we've got three of our original panelists here, and we wanted to plug right on through this. We've got Joe LaFavi, and we've got Hal Hefner, and we've got Jay Bushman, all whom I know really well and are really good friends. And so we're just going to talk about this stuff. Let's just start with introductions. I'm the moderator, so I don't get to introduce myself. Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, what you do, what you're up to.
Hello, my name is Joe LaFavi. I'm the creative director for PsyOp, one of the top content marketing firms out there in the ad world. Ad Age actually just called us the Pixar of the ad world 2 weeks ago when they named us one of the top agencies in the US. It's our job to essentially help brands to connect with people through story. So may it be a comic, may it be a game, may it be a video on YouTube, may it be animation, may it be stop motion, may it be VR. It's our job to find not just the channel and the media that most resonates with fans, but then the story around that story so that they can discover it and that they willingly seek out and share it with the people who they care about and the people who matter the most.
Nice, the Pixar.
I know, right?
Good.
That was a good day.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Hal Hefner, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello. So my name is Hal Hefner, like Steve said, and I am an artist, first and foremost, as well as a content strategist, creative director, and all-around just kind of creative guy that when you need stuff, I do it. And I actually have worked with these two guys before at Fourth Wall Studios, and we produce some pretty cool content there that hopefully you guys have all seen. And if not, you need to go see it. and I actually have recently been working with some really cool ad agencies, one being 3AM, the other being Ignition. And my last project that I finished up was working on The Martian with an amazing team at 3AM, doing all of the meta content that came out before the film. So, and right now I'm currently consulting at DeviantArt, working on an art challenge app to get people to draw every day.
Really?
Yes.
That's cool.
Thank you. So yeah, that's pretty fun. That's what I'm doing right now. And over to you.
Okay, I'm Jay Bushman. I'm a writer and producer of, I'm going to say the T word, Transmedia Entertainment. I've come to grips with the word. I'm okay with it.
It's in the title of the panel.
Yeah.
But we're here to tell you that it's a lie.
Like Hal said, I worked with them at Fourth Wall Studios on a whole bunch of really cool projects. Was a writer and producer on a show called The Lizzie Bennett Diaries, and its follow-up. I was co-creator and showrunner of the follow-up, Welcome to Sanditon. I am, earlier this year, I wrote a web series tie-in for the new Terminator movie called Terminator Genesis, The YouTube Chronicles, which had a VR component to it, and I understand we're contractually obligated to mention VR in every panel at Digital Hollywood this year, so
yes,
got that in. And I am also founder and chief creative officer of a startup called Horizon Factory, and we have built a app authoring platform for content creators to take their media, be it video, audio, text, graphics, social, interactive, or any combination of those, and very easily turn them into mobile, tablet, and soon smart TV apps with no coding knowledge required.
And it is very cool. I've seen it. I love it.
Yeah, highly endorse.
Thank you.
And Ramon is another one of our pinch hitters at the last minute. Thanks for coming, Ramon. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks for waiting. Sure. My name is Ramon Govea, founder of Black Mass Studios. I work a lot with companies that are looking for basically building their brand in the digital space. So I work with a lot of non-entertainment companies. Beyond that, I'm a writer-producer. I've worked with Stan Lee's POW Entertainment, Warner Brothers, a couple other larger companies in developing digital stuff. So web series, stories that takes place on Twitter, things like that. Most recently, I've been working with Stan Lee on a superhero Transmedia property.
Oh yeah.
Is my mic not on? Oh, not leaning forward. Most recently, I've been working with Stan Lee's Power Entertainment on a superhero transmedia property. I really hate that word too, but I'll use it. And also just recently have been consulting people on crowdfunding, so that's a really cool space that I've been playing with. A lot of fun, basically cutting out the middleman and being able to raise your own financing. So been working on that and just successfully launched a campaign recently for a comic book IP that we're developing into a several platform narrative.
It's nice. I think the common thread here is it feels like it's story.
Yes,
Story.
very much so.
Story in not necessarily story, areas, right? What has traditionally not been a story, area of expert, company or whatever. So,
And speaking of story,
yes. Speaking of story.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I'll introduce myself.
have to.
Might
There
as
you
well.
go.
Steve Peters. I'm the founder and CCO of No Mimes Media, and we tell multi-platform stories. We do everything from everything from writing and creating experiences to production and all that kind of stuff. Just finished up a fun project with Hyundai and Imagine Dragons, where we sent people around LA. And I'm also the host of the Story Forward podcast, where we talk about the future of entertainment. So stop on by the Story Forward podcast if you want to hear. A lot of these people are recurring guests, and so that's us. So thanks for coming. We'll see you. We don't know what we're doing. No, we do. Because I found out I was moderating like 6 hours ago. So Joe, help us define what the title of this thing.
Oh, no.
We've got the title of this is what is the title of this?
Multi-level
Yes,
entertainment.
Transmedia.
I read
video,
the
games,
manual.
books, 3D web.
Yes.
So what are we talking about? What the hell does multi-level entertainment experiences even mean?
I honestly, me personally, I
To
wish,
you.
yes, I wish people would stop focusing on what the word means and more focus on its application and what it means to the consumers and what it means to certain audiences. That if you put 10 marketers in a room and ask them to write a job description, or 10 producers in a room and ask them to write a job description, each one of them may have a different answer. Transmedia is the same exact scenario, that I'm not as focused on defining what an academic term may mean, but more of going, if I have a story world, if I have a brand, and it needs to exist across multiple forms of media, because for franchises nowadays, that is becoming increasingly important, how do you do that organically? How do you do that where you can natively exist within all of these platforms, do something worthwhile, and then once you get their attention, not just get their attention, because a kitten video can do that, but to earn their respect, to earn some fandom, to then drive them to something else so that they can more and more become invested emotionally, financially, creatively into the brand long term. I think Transmedia really represents just a very coordinated, orchestrated way to build fandom long term, to build a community around an IP.
Yeah. So anybody else have anything?
Yeah,
I'm sure you do.
I'll weigh in on this one.
Yeah.
It seems like we've talked about nothing else for
Yeah, I
the past
know.
5 years.
Yeah.
But
That's why I'm
I like
not
to say
saying anything.
that at
Yep.
any given time over the past 5 years, I have been on every single side of the multi-side argument about what this term is, and so I've sort of come to peace with it. For me, it helps to zoom out and take a 100,000-foot view. Which is that specifically in the media or specifically for artists or people who create things, we have for decades, if not centuries, defined ourselves by the platform we work in, right? You're not a writer, you're a novelist. And if you define yourself as a novelist, it means you write prose, text, it's roughly this number of pages with a cover around it, or now the digital equivalent of that, but you're defining your platform and then working within it. If you define yourself as a sitcom writer, that is a very specific shape of the type of writing. If you're an impressionist painter, it means you use a certain type of canvas, a certain style. We have spent centuries on what are the specific divisions between this platform and that platform, and parsing those things. And I remember, coming up in the industry, the one piece of advice I always got and somehow just could never listen to was pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah.
Because they're going to pigeonhole you anyway, so you might as well decide what hole you want to be in. The difference now is this is one of the things that the internet has completely changed, because not just as creators, but as people who just live in the world we live in, we on a day-to-day basis are constantly taking information from different platforms and different channels and synthesizing them into our daily life. You watch a little bit of the news on TV in the morning, or maybe you get a news story on your Twitter feed, and then you get a link from someone on Facebook, and then you see a funny GIF that somebody made on Tumblr, and you as the individual are synthesizing all of this stuff in your head and building a narrative. To me, at its very core, that's what transmedia is. It's breaking out of the definition of I do a single thing on a single platform and saying I have all of this stuff at my disposal. What that means, though, is that when everybody's talking about transmedia, everyone's talking about something different from everyone else.
Yep. And that's
this is
the
where the
main
crux
problem.
of the debate and the confusion comes in. So I kind of like to think of it now as sort of transmedia is the macro world of, I wish we could reclaim the term multimedia, because I think that's
exactly.
It makes so
but
much
that's
sense.
just the big first sphere, and then we then we get to decide what pieces we choose from within that sphere and make a format. And,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have it? Ramon?
Yeah, it's essentially storytelling without boundaries. When you're talking about being defined by your platform, you're limiting the way that people are able to engage with your story. And so, as I'm sure everyone can attest to, when you're able to break outside of that wall, that limitation, and sort of engage people in a new way, where not only are they there to sort of passively be entertained, but they're at the same time being able to become actively involved in the creation of that story, that's when you're really pushing these boundaries and these limits, and you're really becoming, it's just much more than any term I think can really define. It's just storytelling in a new dimension, I guess.
Yeah.
And and if you have no idea of what it is, a prime example right now, which kind of takes the term full circle, because one of the big debates about transmedia is that transmedia or is that franchising? Well, if you're wondering if the lines are blurred, look no further than Star Wars. Look what Star Wars is doing right now. They've basically eliminated a lot of their canon content from the past. They've wiped that out so that they can tell stories that are in line with what they're doing now. They've released them in comic book, novel format, and those formats all hint and tell different little vignettes of what's to come in the new movies coming out. So that's it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here's the big question for me, and we've got, this is a unique, you guys are all practitioners. We're all people that have been immersed in doing this for the last, decades, some of us. So the question then becomes to me is like, okay, sure, this is a cool way to tell stories, and we've gone from the cool to the now, right? Which is, but so the big question is why? What's the benefit? What's the okay? Well, let's leave Star Wars out of it, because I still think that's a lot more to that is franchising.
Franchise.
Sure.
Than action figures is, But I mean, let's talk about what are the benefits? Why do we go to this trouble? Why is it important? Because there's challenges. It's like every time you ask somebody to switch platforms,
you're going
to lose part of your audience. So what are the benefits of this? Why is it worth doing? What's
for me? It's sort of alludes to what I was saying before, which is this is just how we live today.
Yeah.
This is the way that our day-to-day lives work now. And to be able to use that same quality to create story and to create engaging experiences is, it's an opportunity that not many people have had before. I mean, it's a totally unique ecosystem, and we got a long way to go to exploring it. But that's what gets me excited about it.
Well, it feels like it's just surrounding us.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to take advantage of.
It's almost by necessity. I mean, if you look at the evolution of the internet and video games, I mean, this is completely new in the last couple of decades, where you have people who are creators. I mean, you have these. I remember when I was a kid playing video games. I remember when customization first became a big thing, where you were able to create your own character the way you wanted it to look, and sort of interact with the world in a way that you best felt was going to represent you as a creator, as a storyteller in your own right. And so because we've evolved in these sort of platforms, in the way video games are, and virtual reality is a new emerging technology, I think it's just kind of by necessity storytelling has to evolve in order to really compete in the market. If you really want to have a brand or an IP that I think is going to last, then you have to sort of use these groundbreaking platforms and try and engage with people in new ways.
Well, I think that, one thing, and, we're at a conference called Digital Hollywood, but I want to bring even to the more traditional tools like just publishing and digital publishing, that all of these mediums have strengths and weaknesses. All of these mediums access different people in different ways. Like I've done over 150 licensed publishing works, comics, books, manga, because take a video game, for instance. If you have a first-person shooter, the only thing you're doing in that game is looking, pointing, and shooting and killing. That's pretty much it. There's not a lot of opportunity for story there unless you have cinematics, and some of the more independent games don't even have that. And so if you take a comic book, if you take a mode of storytelling that allows you to explore that world, allows you to connect with that mythology in an emotional way, now you have a layer to that experience, an emotional context to that narrative that you could have never had any other way. So that, when we were working on this game, Hawken, it ultimately achieved over 100 million registered users within a year because they connected through a free digital comic book through Comixology. 75% of our readers registered for the game because now there was a reason for them to play. It wasn't just looking around and shooting. They emotionally felt what it was like to be inside and outside of that cockpit in a way that made this brand unique. It made them look at this brand in a way that differentiated that IP from all their other people in the market. And I think from the most traditional tools to the most groundbreaking tools, they are storytelling tools. Yeah. And if you understand the limitations and strengths of those channels, of those devices, you can be able to access people and have them understand and appreciate your world in an entirely new way.
So, okay, well let's talk about this from. This is great, and there's challenges to this. We've talked before about the silos of the studios and the networks and the challenges that this represents. But let's talk about from a filmmaking standpoint, the filmmaker and the showrunner. I mean, Hal, does Ridley Scott really care about Twitter for his projects?
No, Ridley Scott cares about telling good stories, like you would expect him to.
That's awesome.
And so I think that's the most important thing is to get, I think, directors and people like that that have that mindset to care about this and really want to care about their universe that they're building and want to take it and explode it so that because basically. Why we all do this? It's marketing, right? Let's not call it anything that it's not.
Well, right now it's marketing.
Yeah,
it feels like that's where
that's where the budgets come from. That's where they've continuously come from. But we've all been trying to make it so that it's not marketing, right? Yeah. That's what we try to do. We try to take typical bland marketing that sucks, and hide it in story and make it valuable and make it so you really want to see that movie or you want to indulge in this content. And so like that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like getting directors and getting people of high stature who are producing these and creating these wonderful universes that we all love to take it one step further instead of just focus on I'm making a movie. But you can do so much more with it,
Yeah.
I actually completely disagree with that.
Of course you would.
What?
Yeah.
Yes. Shocking, I know.
Jay's in denial.
Yes. No, it's because to me the viability of any format, any art form is tested when all the money goes away. Nobody pays poets. Ballet is still here, even though it's a tiny, tiny, tiny niche. Radio drama was on life support for decades until podcasting brought it back.
Woo. Yep.
But does anybody do ARGs anymore? Like maybe there's one a year. Like the marketing money went away and the format went away too. To make a viable format that will connect with audiences, it's not about who's writing the big checks. It's about the small independent creators and their small audiences coming together and caring enough about this to keep it going even when there is no money. To me, that's the litmus test for anything on whether or not it's going to stand the test of time.
Yeah,
Because it's really like Hal, you're absolutely right. It's really easy to sell. It's not really easy. It's comparatively easy to sell somebody who's got a couple of $1 million to do a marketing campaign for something else, that they need something splashy and here's something new or kind of cool, and you can get a bunch of eyeballs on this, or you can write a compelling press release about this.
Right.
But once that money goes away, does anybody care anymore?
Well, but I mean, one of the things you can look at too, it's like, sure, all these independent things are great, and I've been stuck in independent land my whole life, but like without some kind of money and some kind of funds coming in, it's very hard to do things. So that's why if you want to break ground and do different things, it's vital to have some kind of financial support in order to do so.
The other, I hate to call it currency, that I think is very undervalued these days is fandom. That, I've worked on, national theatrical campaigns for millions of dollars, and I've worked with a free radio drama podcast, Thrilling Adventure Hour. And both of them succeeded because they valued the fans as investors.
Yeah.
And that when fandom drove the success of the IP, that propulsion, that fuel, was something that no one could ever take away from us. It was always a foundation, a core that we can build upon and grow with time.
And I'm working with that right now.
Yeah, and
because I'm consulting with DeviantArt, and
exactly
that's all it is like really realizing what you can do with, in a way, the fandom that they have for other proproperties that spans everything from My Little Pony to Star Wars to Harry Potter. To then the fandom that is the DeviantArt community for DeviantArt itself.
Yeah.
So it's fandom can be so many things, but it is a very, very, very powerful too. And Jay and Ramon and Steve, fandom is the reason why we're sitting here all right now.
And it's the core of what crowdfunding is now, and that's why it's a beautiful thing. If you can connect with that audience directly, then you don't necessarily need to rely on the big budget anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, Thrilling Adventure Hour and Boss Monster, two people that we worked with, broke records on Kickstarter in 2011 when you didn't do that and raised six figures because we knew that they had a link to the community, because they had an authentic connection with them and credibility with them, that there's a social contract with fandom now. Fans are willing to invest money in order to get the kind of content they want. Right. And they're willing to invest long term. That it's not some just, okay, I'll do this for 2 seconds and then jump onto the next thing. If they truly fall in love with something, it says something about them. It becomes a lifestyle brand. And I think when you can find that kind of core support, you can use that as the driver, as the springboard for going multi-level. I think really all the brands that we've been a part of, that is the DNA that really makes it special. If you have that core community, doesn't matter if it's 50 people or 50 million, but if you have true believers who can be torchbearers and ambassadors for you, who can say, I love this, why don't you, to their friends and family, that fire can become a brush fire and really become the thing that drives your success.
Right.
Yeah, both in terms of word of mouth, organic marketing, as well as financial success.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, fan development is we could do a panel on fan
development.
God,
yes. And I wish people did
because,
more.
Yeah,
seriously.
Because the thing that a lot of people don't realize, if you make the realization that it's all about a conversation now, it's not broadcast.
Yes.
It's not just broadcasting. Here's this about that stuff.
Yep.
Perfectly said.
It's engaging that fan community and having a conversation with them and bringing them in and making them feel part of it. So many success stories out there and so many lost opportunities out there that I see. So yeah, I think. Anybody else have anything? I love having smart people on panels.
Yeah, I think there's actually all of that is absolutely true. There's a danger that I see there, however, and all the stuff that Joe was just saying about that authentic emotional connection with the audience is so powerful, and. Shows like Thrilling Adventure Hour, Welcome to Night Vale is another really great example. The path that they've followed is to take that springboard into traditional media outlets. So Thrilling Adventure Hour is now making comic books, and the Welcome to Night Vale novel just came out. And so what we're seeing is something that kind of starts as a brush fire and uses that momentum to then tap traditional outlets to hopefully make money.
Yep. And Lizzie Bennett did
The
the same thing.
yes,
yeah.
Lizzie Bennett did the same thing. The second book just came out a couple of months ago. The danger there, however, is the question is how repeatable is that? Because, and this is one of the reasons that, to contrast that love that Joe was talking about that the fan base had. This is actually the reason why I am almost allergic to the word brand. I hate the word brand, and it's not just the word. It's because
and Transmedia.
brands don't care about you, and they don't care about your project, and they don't care about your fan base.
Kinda like
and
politicians.
brands are looking for properties too, and this is the word that is used, and it's accurately used for what they're doing. They're looking for content and properties to exploit.
Yep.
And they're not hiding that, and they shouldn't. That's exactly what they're doing. But they don't care about the project, and they don't care about the fans.
Looking back to the future.
The danger is that you create this great experience that people love, and the fans have sort of built a community around what you've created. And then you're like, great, thanks. Now we're going to go take a deal somewhere else because you helped us get the attention of a traditional media outlet and format, and so we're just going to sign a deal for that and bye. And that happens a lot, and it's always challenging to kind of check your own motivations as a creator.
Well, whenever you build a community, you got to figure out what you're going to do when the thing that community is built around is gone. And a lot of people don't think that's their responsibility, but I mean, it could be said that it's very much their responsibility. Ramon, did you want to chime in on the Back to the Future stuff?
I mean, I agree. I mean, look, today's Back to the Future Day, and it's a huge Toyota commercial.
Yeah.
It is. They just they've been building it up for a couple of weeks. They're going to have
Also Pepsi.
Marty McFly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pepsi
And that's, I think, at its core, what can happen. That's the
Cubs were
dangerous side of having a bunch of people fall in love with an IP and then having that IP sell out to a corporation. I mean, but I think that's almost a symptom of like our culture in general right now.
Well, that's the path out, and not to turn this back into a plug, but that's one of the impetuses behind the Horizon Factory, the company that I'm building, is to try and provide a path and an outlet and a tool that content creators can use to easily package, distribute, and shock of shockers, sell their media directly to their audiences and get that money back directly and not need to rely on advertising or brands. I used to say that advertising is like kudzu. If you even let a little bit of it into the ecosystem, it will grow until it chokes everything else to death.
That's the internet right now.
Turns out that's not fair to kudzu. Kudzu doesn't actually do that.
So okay, so let's talk a little about this. Is all really, really good. When we talk about multi-platform and multi-anything and all of these different things, a lot of people make an assumption that means, well, now it's got to become interactive, and we've got interactive Emmy Awards now, it's interactive this and interactive that. And is that always the case? Is it necessarily always the case? Is it sometimes the case, or what's the deal? What's the deal with interactivity? Jay, let's talk about the interactive Emmys for a second.
Sure.
Why not? Because Jay has some experience there. I do as well. But let's look at the winners of interactive Emmys. I mean, honestly, for me, and I know there are people out there that look at like the interactive winners, like the Jimmy Fallon thing, and so like, well, what was the interactive thing there? Why I don't get that. And so what does Hollywood think of interactivity and how it fits in with all this stuff?
It's sort of just a giant umbrella to fit anything that is related to the internet.
You have to push a button. You have to log, you have to be online, so it's interactive.
And that's really about it. It's this umbrella that people can use to talk about stuff that doesn't fit into any other category. And you know, I'm actually somewhat sympathetic about that. Like, it's really easy to sit outside and like look at awards that somebody gives out and go, oh my God, how could they do that? And what do they mean? And how could they be so blind? And that's so stupid. But try designing an award show. Try writing those categories. Like we've spent how many years on what is transmedia, what qualifies, what isn't? Like, how do you make these definitions? I was in a discussion on a potential project that might have an award show component, and what we got to was like, we have to remember, what's the purpose of awards? It's that so people can argue about them. That is their point. Like, that is why people like
Isn't that really
them.
true?
I don't know if
think
I
it is.
entirely
I
agree
think
with that.
people love getting bent
You
out
are
of shape.
a negative
by
person.
it.
today.
I am not a negative person. I love it too.
You ate some grumpy flakes this morning.
No, I love it. Yeah.
Eeyore Bushman, ladies and gentlemen. But
No,
that's, I mean, the challenge with this is that line between interactivity. We hear lean forward and lean back a lot,
Right.
And everybody talks about, the need for lean forward. We need to have that. But I mean, at the same time, the challenge is we've got the opportunity to have, to hit story in a surround sort of way. A lot of people don't want to interact. They just want to be entertained.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't. How do we deal
I
with
don't wanna interact. I
that
just wanna
tension
chill.
between?
It's by understanding who your audience is. And there's a
Exactly.
lot of data out there
Exactly.
right now that can help you understand that. But
Absolutely.
there are some people who really like being passive observers,
That's
who
right.
really appreciate just being a consumer and having this experience, may it be long-term or short-term, and just having that be it. And then there are people who want to interact, who need to feel acknowledged, if not special, in the grand scheme of things. And I think it's really looking at every brand and looking at their audience and using the information that we actually have today, which is pretty extraordinary, and use that to make more informed decisions, more targeted content and marketing, so that it doesn't feel like marketing. It just feels like you're giving them exactly what they want, the way they want it, when they want it. I think that we have that power to do that today, and it's something that we should be taking more and more advantage of.
I agree. I think Steve hit the nail on the head earlier when he was talking about publishing too. I mean, when you're talking about a specific platform, I love comic books. I'm always going to love comic books. There's nothing that's going to replace the feeling of holding a book in your hand, looking at those images, and filling in the blanks with your imagination. I love to read. There are always going to be people who love reading novels and experiencing that way. And I think when you get into understanding who your target audience is and delivering to them the exact type of storytelling that they're going to enjoy the most, that's when you can really create sort of this multifaceted, engaging world for a larger group.
Yeah.
We have applause going on.
No, I am applauding because when words get into the picture, I feel like jargon muddies the message a lot of times.
And then when you get into this whole defining everything, it just makes me want to go.
Oh yeah, like if we didn't focus on defining words 5 years ago when Transmedia came out and just started finding case studies for why it works and how, we would be 10 times farther than we are today.
Oh.
And I feel like that's the new opportunity now when we look at transmedia, when we look at VR or AR. It's not what the platform is. It's not what it's called. It's why it works and how, so that we can
Exactly.
replicate it.
Exactly.
Innovation isn't innovative if it only works once.
Right.
You have to build off of the success of the person just before you and go 1 yard farther.
Look,
And I feel that if we're not focused on that long-term gain, we're going to have the same discussion 5 years ago, just as we had the same panel 5 years ago.
Right. I've always believed that the final term for whatever this is going to be determined by the audience.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like when they invented cinema, like they called those things like zoopraxiscope and biograph. And then, somebody coined movies and that stuck. What does the actual word television mean? It means I'm here, it's there, and I can see it. But we don't sit here and parse that apart and what does it mean, the tele, and what's the root of that, whatever. Yeah. We all have an understanding when we say television, it means this kind of stuff delivered this kind of way, because we've got 70 years of shared experience. We've only got 10 years, 15 years at the most of shared experience of this kind of connected storytelling. So,
Yep.
And
you
it
know,
just keeps evolving too. That's the
Exactly.
thing. With all these new platforms, with all
Yeah.
this new technology, things keep evolving. But one thing that stays the same is story.
Exactly.
That's right.
I think the
That's right.
exciting opportunity now, being the front runners, being in the trenches, is that we can focus on not what something means, but what it could represent, what it could be. And I think that's where dreamers really thrive, and that's why a lot of us have came here to the entertainment industry to do that kind of work, and to be here right now, where there's these large questions, and we get to be the one that answers them.
And figure
that
out
if
how
we
someone will
find
pay for
one
it.
case
Yeah.
that says VR works, one case that this type of engagement works, that's a step
Totally.
forward that could influence the business of storytelling, the experience and sharing of storytelling
Does-
for years to come.
Does the challenge then, though, become, okay, here's a success, here's a mainstream success. To me, the challenge then becomes the why.
Yep.
Because
absolutely.
to me, it's I mean, and the stuff like we even did a Fourth Wall, as we were trying to come up with formulas for the interaction versus, to me, it really was a case-by-case basis based on the story.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
Right.
and so many other things. So you can't, there are going to be best practices. Sure, there's going to be a vocabulary that develops. But at the end of the day, kind of that balance is really dependent on very subjective things.
Yeah.
And
It
you
is.
can't- And so the challenge is
yeah.
going to be like, yes, this was a success, and different people are going to glom onto different reasons as to why it is, and then be surprised
I think
and
it's
gasped when it
I think
doesn't.
it's less about the concept of success and more about the idea of love. Like what we're trying to do is we're trying to make stuff
Did you say love?
love.
That people
Are you
love.
trying to counter
audiences
your-
fall
This is
in
the
love
kinder,
with.
gentler Jay now.
Yeah,
We're
I
talking
know.
about love, ladies
Yeah.
and gentlemen.
Yes, it's all about love. I'm all about the love. I
All
mean,
your
we
hugs.
talk a lot.
Yes,
We talk a
fandom
lot
dangerous.
about
All
using
about
cinema history as kind of a guideline and a parallel because movie history is a technological art form. And I always like to go back to the idea of like, what was the first movie with sound? We all think it was The Jazz Singer, but it wasn't. There were tons of movies that used sound before The Jazz Singer. Why was The Jazz Singer important? It was the first movie with sound that the audience fell in love with, and the audience demanded more of it. And if you go back, like, I really encourage people to like go back and read some of the reports from the premiere of The Jazz Singer in New York when it first opened, and the descriptions of like how the crowd lost their minds. Like that's the kind of engagement we're trying to make. And if we can make people fall in love with something, they will demand more of it, and that will solve the problem for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the falling in love with it then also ties back into what we were talking about earlier and fandom.
Yeah.
And it's all, and that's what it's all about is just finding an audience for what you're building.
Can I do a quick show of
Exactly.
hands? How many people watched the new Star Wars trailer yesterday? Okay, now.
Star Wars trailer?
Yeah. Now be honest. Be honest. I know this is going to be difficult, but be honest. How many of you cried?
Sorry.
More of you. Some of you are lying.
Yeah.
A lot of you are lying. We love this thing.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
hits us on a almost genetic
What's
level.
the nostalgia of it?
Oh yeah.
That too, but that kind of connection, like that's why you can make books and comics and stuff on this property because people adore it and people have a tremendous connection to it. This is why the biggest franchises in this sort of millennial space over the past 10 years have been Harry Potter and the Hunger Games. And you like watch the fandoms of
And
those
Twilight
two
as well.
things really, really kind of make these story worlds part of their day-to-day lives.
Right.
Yep. And I think that's the opportunity. I think that's
Yeah.
why multi-level's interesting, because you can permeate everyday life. That, if you keep on shouting in an echo chamber, just about everybody's going to go deaf. But it's true. But if you can find simple ways through social media or through all these different things to just keep on getting closer to them, keep on forming that emotional connection. I mean, Star Wars way back in the day when A New Hope was just a hope and nothing more, it used Comic-Con to build its community. It used direct engagements, a 10-foot table this big, handshakes one by one, handing out buttons, say, please believe in us. And now it just shattered the pre-sale ticket records by, 9 times
Yeah.
it was?
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
unreal.
all out of this idea of, I don't want just your money. I want to be worth your time and investment. I want this to be an experience for you, something that you want to share with your loved ones. And I think that's the opportunity right now, where it's not, how fast is this processor, but how are you engaging with people on an emotional level through a narrative level that allows you to build a relationship you never could have before.
So again, we're talking about, look, there's a lot of technology going on, and we just keep circling around towards, now we've circled around towards to love. We're talking around towards, it's
Love
story,
media.
and it's about love. You want to love me more. Love me over
Yes.
here. Love me on this screen.
Validation.
Love me in this book.
Yes, you
love
need
me,
good
love me on the
stories in
internet.
order
Yeah.
to love.
So we're going to get to some questions and answers. Before we do that, I want to just kind of go down the line. And so we've been talking about really interesting things here today, and it's a lot to cover in an hour. And of course, we could have done 3 panels on 5 different subjects at this point. What I don't want to say rant, but what really bugs you the most about things? What do you wish you could scream from the mountaintops?
Oh,
that
dear.
people, you guys are
Is this
all
recorded?
You guys are all in the trenches. We could make a deal. Maybe
the
they turn
record.
off the recorder. I don't know. But this is let's just. You guys are honest people, and you guys know the deal, and you guys have been doing the work. So go for it. Yell it. Go. What's? Go.
All right, I'll throw it on this mic. Okay, the thing that bugs me the most is when people find an emerging platform, they focus on the technology or the tool and not why the hell it needs to exist in the first place. I see so many VCs and so many companies running to build the next competition to Oculus when no one's proving a reason why it needs to exist.
Because
And
we
I-
haven't even seen the new Oculus.
Exactly. And so I feel like content will always be king, and curation will always be the way that the king is voted into office. And I feel that the more people start focusing on validating the existence of it, to find those use cases, to find reasons why this thing needs to perpetuate and to grow and to become that everyday extension of how we experience story, I feel like people keep on getting distracted by the technology or the platform and the medium, and not, how do I use this to do my job better? Why does this need to exist in my toolbox, and what is it uniquely doing that's going to have relevance? Yeah, that's the question I wish more people would ask. I wish we would stop talking about technology and not how do we use that technology as a storytelling tool to do our jobs better.
Totally. And I think that's exactly. And that actually, I think that's a perfect segue into one thing that really, I wouldn't say bothers me, but it's something that I would like to see changed. And the big problem I think we've all faced is the fact that when we're dealing with a studio, especially a studio, a brand, or some kind of entity that might be excited about what he was mentioning, a platform or something, and has a piece of content that they, or property that they want to get out there, they don't understand how to do that. And when they come to us to do that, when we pitch them the ideas back, they
How are you going to use Snapchat? How are you going to use Snapchat?
Seriously. Yep. Okay, can we make a VR experience? It's like,
On
yeah,
Snapchat?
for 5 people to see at a convention. So like, I think, and the big problem, I think, is the fact that a lot of the stories that we're trying to tell across different platforms or however we may do it come from the marketing budgets. And I think when that stops happening, then I think we could open the doors and get some validity into these things so that they're not compartmentalized into marketing. They're actually considered a part of the offering of the entire franchise itself. And so when we can get studios and brands to really stop, forcing what we're trying to do into little pockets, and then the budget's coming from other places, I think it could help a lot, and also help in just telling better stories and allowing us to do more. So studios and brands, I want you to get your shit together, and that's what bothers me.
Leave the mic. Don't hit the mic.
I'm not going to.
I'm sorry.
Jay.
I'm going to have to pay for that, aren't I?
I'm going to steal a line from Jim Stewartson, who I know is here in the audience
left.
today. Did he go?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
I'm going to steal this line
you're gonna
anyway.
No,
make
this
up a
is
line that
your
you
line.
thought
This
of.
is mine. It's copyrighted. most of what we see that passes for storytelling on the internet today is the 21st century equivalent of vaudeville.
Yep.
Vaudeville's great. Vaudeville does what it does, but it is a very different thing than more traditional or more scripted storytelling, and it is the neo-vaudevillians have crowded out every conversation about what is possible storytelling-wise, especially on YouTube.
Oh.
And the problem, but this is an unsustainable phenomenon because they are gonna burn these kids out. It's already happening. Like, that lifestyle is not sustainable, and people are killing themselves and ruining their own lives, and it's
some
just
people ruining their children's.
yeah, and it's not sustainable. It's really exploitive, and anybody who has any kind of like realization that like, hey, maybe I should slow down, or maybe I should stop, or maybe I should take care of myself, it immediately falls off the radar. And we've set up this monster that is just chewing up and spitting people out, and it's really worrisome to me.
Good question.
Question was,
Nothing
can
I
you
can,
give examples?
nothing I would want to say publicly, because some of these are from private conversations of people who 3 years ago were household names or household names in the YouTube ecosystem, and who don't really ping the needle anymore because they just physically had to stop. And once you get off the merry-go-round, nobody cares anymore. And all we're setting up is this dynamic where people have to work harder and harder and faster and with less oversight and with less time to stop and think about things. And the speed is insane.
Yeah.
And someone's going to get hurt real badly. And it's just a matter of time.
Well, it's like, the analogy to me of the creative cow. It's like it's like create content, more content, more content, more
Yep.
content.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's like, hooking a cow up to a milking machine, never giving it a chance to graze.
Yeah.
Uh,
And be a cow.
And when it's grazing and being a cow, it's producing every bit as much as when it's hooked up to that machine. So
Yeah.
this is another panel we could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ramon.
Yeah, I don't know how I follow all those, but no, I mean, I echo a lot of the sentiment that's being shared up here. And when I have a lot of these conversations, the thing that really bugs me the most when I'm talking to a potential client, whether it's a brand or a larger company, studios, it's that these executives forget that at the core of this, it's story.
Yep.
And
Yep.
ultimately, if you can't engage an audience with a compelling story, then all the money you're trying to put into this isn't worth jack. Is pretty much what it comes down to. So I think there's just a huge opportunity for creators, like all these guys up here, people who have sort of grown up in this generation of fandom where we've been super fans of these stories like Star Wars. We grew up being able to experience these things and have this just unexplainable drive or passion for a world. And when you can take that passion and put it into a project or a campaign for a larger company, then let us do that. You know what I mean? Like, let us do what we know how to do. Let us tell stories. Let us tell you what platforms are best for your brand or your story. And trust us with that. I mean, I wish I could just sometimes say that to people.
It's that pesky content.
Yeah.
That everybody thinks, we'll just get some content.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to do, right? And everybody, probably most of you in this room, know that that's the hardest part. Everybody's like, all these people that are starting digital channels. And I'm going, why is this a hotel chain or whatever? Why are they starting a digital channel? What is the what's the content?
Exactly.
Why is anybody going?
Exactly.
What are they thinking? We'll just get some content, and that's the hardest. That's the hardest part, right? I mean, because
it's all these keywords, it's all these buzzwords that people are throwing around, and I think that's what we're talking about. It's all semantics, really. They just want to label something and say, I heard somebody on a panel talk about that, so that's what we need. And you really need to approach it from a standpoint of what is your message, what are you trying to say, and then how do you implement that into a compelling story that people are really gonna be moved by in some way. The love, where's that gonna come from?
I will say that's more important today, probably today than, I mean, there's a lot of technology being bandied about right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Though people seem to worry about content. Okay,
Yeah.
let's open it up to questions to this fine group.
Bring it.
Yes.
So this is a little snarky, but I apologize. If the commercial aspects of this business are difficult, what's the answer to that? I mean, going back to your comment about Toyota and Pepsi taking advantage of Back to the Future Day, would it be okay if it were organic fertilizer? Because that played a big part in that. My point is, and I hate manure. And I agree with the kind of anarchy kind of anarchy.
On record, I never said that.
Yeah. These are not the thoughts of Psyop Media Company
Right.
LLC.
But it seems to be a necessary part of it.
I don't think any of us are saying that commercialization and monetization are bad.
Yeah, because
I
they
think
pay our bills.
because they pay our bills, and
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
But it's a question of like, what are we doing this for?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
nobody gives a shit about Toyota and what they choose to advertise and what they choose to
yeah.
slap their brand on.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I would agree with that.
You know.
I think
Yeah.
with the whole
Right.
commercialization
But-
question.
I'm sorry.
go,
no.
go.
Look,
Sorry.
anyone remember the 60s TV show The Prisoner?
Sure.
Awesome.
There's this amazing episode of The Prisoner where there's an art show, and number 6 is building a sculpture for the art show, which is really a boat, and he can take it apart and put it back together and make a boat so he can escape. And as they go through the art show, the judges go to everyone's piece, and it's all about number 2, the guy who heads the village, the big bad guy. And it's like a painting of him, and it's a sculpture of number 2, and it's all, everyone else has made something about number 2, and number 6 keeps saying, it's all right that I'm making this, and the judges are like, oh yeah, sure, fine, no, don't worry about it. And then when the judges come to his, they look at it, and one of the judges says, I just have one question, where is number 2? To me, this is what our ecosystem has become. Like, it doesn't matter what the piece is, where's the brand? Like if you don't have the brand, if you don't have the big giant entity behind it, nobody knows how to consume it. Nobody knows why is this important. Nobody knows where it fits in the ecosystem. And that, I think there's something really messed up about that. But it's such a part of our ecosystem. It's such a part of the air we breathe. It's really hard to see that sometimes.
I think it comes down to how overt your exploitation is. I mean, if we're talking about, for example, Back to the Future, right? I mean, they built up this whole campaign, and the whole thing is just to unveil one car, right? And it's just so overtly in your face that you have to think about how sophisticated people are and how sophisticated consumers are becoming every day. It's all about marketplace sophistication. If you're not thinking about how intelligent people are that are watching TV, younger kids now, or they're aware of the tricks that have been done before, so you have to think ahead of that. You have to be a little bit more clever about how you're going to integrate, your brand. That's what I think the next sort of step.
I wish we
is.
could go back to the 50s radio model where Orson Welles comes on at the beginning and tells us about how Campbell's soup is awesome for 30 seconds.
Brought to you
Then
by
they do a
Tide.
show,
Yeah.
and then it's over, and he comes back and says thank you to Campbell's soup.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
that's
there's something
what-
more honest about that.
Yeah, well, that's what mid-roll media does right now with podcasts. None of their ads are scripted. Every single one of them is live read by a host and often said with sincerity of brands they actually know and respect.
I think that's going to be the nail on the
Yeah,
head. Right there.
I think there's always a way to commercialization should be a path for a lot of brands because you should be able to make your passion your profession.
And let me just say,
I don't support any creative culture that tells me I have to do what I love for free. I think we should have those mechanisms and that path in place. And if it's not there, then we should build it and pave it and zoom. But I don't think commercialization is a bad word. No. I think that monetization should be the goal for anyone who wants to make what they love what they do for a living.
Yeah, the Kardashianization is the only bad word we have in this.
And let me just say that Casper makes really great mattresses. Casper.com. Next question.
That guy,
Oh,
actually. The guy in the red shirt.
I already picked him.
Oh, sorry.
Who's moderating?
Yeah, I know, but
Just when you ask about how does one monetize it, I mean, wouldn't we expect it to eventually go the way of television, that once the content is good enough that people really want to engage with it, we don't want ads with our TV anymore. We're watching Netflix, we're watching iTunes, we're watching Amazon Prime. Couldn't it just go that way? That
Subscriptions,
I would
yeah.
pay for a subscription or for a multi-platform
Right.
store for everyone.
I would love that.
And then I can have it without ads.
It
I don't
just,
think it's that far-fetched.
it's not far-fetched at all. It just so happens that the Horizon Factory supports that very model
Yeah.
of subscription oriented programming, as well as direct sales, as well as in-app purchases. The one thing we do not support is advertising. Our systems will not work with app systems. If a client wants to drop their own thing in there, we're not going to stop them. But we think fundamentally that advertising is a shitty business model.
except when it's fake and you're using it as a motive of story. That's when it's fun.
That's not a
Question
business
over
model.
here. Who had the question over here?
The guy in the red shirt.
Red shirt.
I just have a question about like responsibility. Like I feel like clients come to companies like and they'll ask for certain things, but I think some responsibility falls on the studio whoever's creating the content as well. Because like a lot of clients will come with like a certain like this is what I want because somebody told me this is what I should get.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times like the studios creating content don't take responsibility and try to guide them more towards the
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no,
I think a good studio does, right?
One would hope, but I think that's the reason why you have people like us on this panel and not the heads of marketing at Warner and Sony, because you need an informed perspective with high integrity and a mutual respect for both the brand and their community to guide them down the right path. And that's why we've been able to do this for 10, 15 years, all of us, because we've been the ones who have like stood our ground and said, I know your brand checklist says you need an iPad app, but let me tell you why you don't. Let me tell you why your money is better spent here.
Right,
and in
yeah.
fact,
Right.
here's the person who does it not the cheapest in Bangladesh, but the best.
Yeah.
And I feel like that really does differentiate the kind of work that we've been doing in the market for so many years, is because we continuously look for the best solution and not just the one that's going to get the yes
Not
from
just
the
be
client.
yes, exactly, yes men.
exactly.
We're all not yes men, if you could tell.
Yeah.
I think especially if you always pause and go, let me save you some money.
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
too.
I'm a maybe man though. I mean just as out of necessity, we have
have
to go
to be,
into
yeah.
those meetings and
Yeah.
say, here's what I think you should do, and
Yeah.
then they say, no, we want you to do this instead, and it's like, well, will the check clear?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Like, I would never in a million years want to be a head of marketing at a studio. That is a thankless job.
Very hard.
Very, very hard.
Yeah.
Those people are courageous.
Next question.
I have a question, sort of following along with your new business model and Verizon, no advertising. You know, there's this sort of rug burn getting people from platform to platform. So is that, I mean, maybe the answer is, as you've been saying, is just the quality of the story. How do you translate people saying, I expect things for free, I expect things right away, I have to deal with this sort of news psychology assumptions out there with that
Right.
model where they have to pay, how do you get it?
Right. I hate to keep plugging my company,
Yeah,
but I mean
exactly.
this is
Yeah.
exactly
Plug it
what
for you. Yeah.
this is exactly what we set out to solve, because people are socialized right now to pay for apps. There's still a lot of barrier to getting people to download apps when you compare to looking at a website. But people will not pay for things on websites, except on very, very rare occasions. But people have been socialized to pay for apps.
And then in purchases within apps,
yeah,
too.
so that is a money-making path. Sorry?
Where you're constraining them, I mean, it's really hard to get someone to buy an app or
Now it is. Today it is. But if you look kind of 5 and 10 years out and how the ecosystem is shifting, and obviously we're making an enormous bet that the ecosystem is going to shift more towards app purchases. We didn't design the ecosystem that we have. I mean, that's Apple and Google and
Yeah,
those
I mean,
people,
I
but
think a
it's
lot of
what we
it's-
have to work with.
Yeah,
And
a lot of
so
it's going
we're
to depend
taking a bet.
on those kind of shifting things.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Go ahead. You on the end there?
Yeah, so the immersive nature now of the media that's coming with augmented reality, virtual reality, the youth now are basically engaged with whatever screen it is, many hours a week, addicted, that type of thing. And what I love about what you're saying is that you're looking at bringing some values, some principles, possibly saying enough, maybe cut back on that. And this is the first time I've heard in the conference the words love and integrity.
You have to.
Yes.
That's all we have is
Sweet.
our integrity, and our love for what we do.
Yep.
So my question is that we know that media impacts the culture
Mm-hmm.
in a huge way. The question I had when I was at the Immersive Education Initiative last year was how are we using media to impact culture for good, right? In moral and ethics and that kind of stuff. Some of those kind of things
Right.
that used to be there maybe many years ago, in the 50s or a couple hundred years ago, and that we're losing. So how
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's turning into
100
this.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think a lot of us were influenced by those brands, like me personally, like Star Trek or Jim Henson Company. People who believed that we actually, like they didn't give up on humanity,
Yeah.
and they
Right.
used sci-fi and fantasy and speculative fiction to broadcast messages of hope and inspiration in a
Absolutely.
way that changed culture.
Yeah.
And I feel like that opportunity is truly there. Even in consumer product brands can convey hopes of message and family. Like there's so many opportunities. It's a choice that you make. Do I do the bare minimum, or do I take this opportunity to do the very best version of this story that lasts the test of time? And I feel like that right now is our responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility to look at this thing and not just how I can make money, not just how I can break into this market, but how do I use this opportunity so that people remember my story.
Meaningful.
Yes,
stuff.
meaningful
Meaningful.
engagements and expressions so that those brands are the ones that continue to endure and thrive for the years to come.
I would, however, like to quibble with one of the premises of your question, which is that currently we're in an environment where these ethics and values are being lost.
I agree.
I mentioned this, I referenced these franchises a little earlier. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go to a convention called LeakyCon, which is a fan convention that originally came out of the Harry Potter fandom and then expanded to other types of fandom. And it was a revelation. The attendees of LeakyCon, mostly kids from, say, 14 to their mid-20s. And the things that they talked about over and over and over again, Harry Potter and the Hunger Games as spurs to social action. That these, now, like I said earlier, like we're Star Wars kids, right? What does Star Wars teach you? You could be special. You could be the one person in the galaxy that's really important. What does Harry Potter teach this generation? That no matter what, if you stand together with your friends, you can do anything. And even if one person is quote unquote the chosen one, he needs his friends, and unity in the face of evil is what triumphs over evil. What is a Hunger Games about? The Hunger Games is about no matter how much you've been hurt, you can survive if you come together with the people around you. These are incredibly powerful, incredibly hopeful franchise messages that the audiences for them have embraced and have turned into spurs for action in the real world. So I'm actually more hopeful. I don't think we live in a time right now where values and morals are being lost. I think they're on the upswing.
Agreed.
And it makes me really, really excited.
I'm just saying, for the common denominator, if you look at the TV and you just sort of pick through, and if the bathroom jokes or all this other kind of stuff is what you're talking about
Right.
quality and quantity. And so it's like, how you raise the value.
Dude, do you remember television in the early 80s?
Yeah.
In the 70s? It was horrible. Even
So
like a
much
middling
junk.
television show right now is so much smarter and better than most of what was on television 20 years ago.
But some of the, I see what your point
know?
is, though. Some of the unscripted, like reality TV, like I mentioned earlier, like the Kardashians. Now that's,
But that's Sturgeon's law.
Yeah,
90% of everything is crap.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, there has to be a balance, and for every really inspiring story, there'll be a YouTube video of someone getting hit in the nuts with a football, and that's humanity. That's society's balance, and so it's just making sure that those scales are equal. It's fighting the ongoing war.
All right,
Let's get
time for one more.
we're good. Okay, let's go with
come
one
up
more
and ask
question.
us.
Yeah, we'll be here.
Yeah.
And she's kicking us out.
Tradecraft question, in this
Oh.
loftier discussion.
We're done.
I'm trying to find a quality standard for either live action or CGI VR for the consumer who's looking through Google Cardboard.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, if for the project I'm working on, which is a graphic novel with cardboard I wonder if you could tell me individually if you've seen something, either live action or CGI, through cardboard that looks good enough to put your name on.
All right, let's make these very quick answers.
I mentioned earlier, I worked on the Terminator Genesis, the YouTube Chronicles, which had a 360 element to it that was produced by a company called Specular Theory, and they're out there. So go say hi to them, tell them I sent you.
Right.
And my answer is no.
Not yet. Keep track of PSYOP. We're having something fairly soon.
No, I haven't.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys. Let's give them a big hand. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.